A student is stuck, so you ask, what operation should you use here? Or do you think you should divide? They sound like questions, but what ends up happening is that the mathematical decision has already been made, and students' thinking often stops at that point. Some of our most helpful sounding questions are actually instructions wearing question marks. By the end of this video, you'll have practical language you can use when students are stuck without telling them the next step. And you'll also know how to ask fewer questions to allow for more student thinking. Hi, I'm Michelle, founder of Thinking Math Corner, and I'm a full-time math teacher with over 20 years classroom experience. I help math teachers move students beyond memorized procedures by making intentional, thinking-focused instructional choices that are realistic within the pressures of an actual classroom and help to make teaching feel lighter for teachers. So I'd like to know, what is one question you find yourself asking students over and over again? Is it, what formula should you use? What do you do now? What operation do you need? Share yours in the comments. The goal is not to stop asking prompts. It's to use prompts that keep the mathematical decisions in students' hands. The questions that we use most frequently are the ones that are worth examining first. When we talk about prompting, we're going to talk about two types of prompts. Procedural prompts prompt a student into action, and noticing prompts prompt the student to notice and observe what's happening, understand mathematically what's happening before the action. In the 3 Thinking Triggers guide linked in the description below, I've included 3 noticing prompts that can help you encourage student thinking in the classroom without taking it over. In the classroom, we want to move from procedural prompts to noticing prompts. So let's give an example. Instead of saying, what operation should you use? A procedural prompt. Maybe you say, what do you notice? What could you do here? What model might help? Those are noticing prompts. Noticing prompt questions don't assume a strategy, and they allow students to be the selectors of a given strategy. When students think that math is all about the speed at which we get an answer, that action becomes really important. But once they understand that math is actually about the thinking involved as opposed to the speed, then the noticing prompts become so helpful. When students are noticing things, that speed reflex is slowed down. Some other noticing prompts could be, does the order matter? What's changing? What's staying the same? What information do we have? What do we need? Those are all questions that have little to do with the action, but they put the decision-making in the student's hands. Sometimes students have noticed plenty, but there's one part that becomes the roadblock. When students say, I don't know what to do, that's just too broad. I often say to my students, I can't do anything with that. I need more information. And that's when we start going through and seeing what we actually do understand so that we can figure out where the initial roadblock was. We can ask students, does this make sense? Where did you stop understanding? Do you understand what's the context of the question? What decision are you trying to make? And what have you already ruled out? Those prompting questions, not using all of them obviously, but using 1 or 2 can help you diagnose where the thinking stopped and where the problem was. So a student could say, I don't understand this equation. And your response can be, what part makes sense to you? Or which part still makes sense? The student may reveal that they understand the equation, but not how to isolate the variable. Now that the obstacle is clearer, the support can be smaller, which is what we want. Once we have a specific obstacle that the student has articulated, we can provide support without taking over the thinking and leave the mathematical decisions in students' hands. Students can sometimes need an access point, not a sequence of steps. A useful prompt can direct students towards a model or a representation without taking over the thinking, and the student needs to choose how to use it. For example, could a diagram help? What about a table of values? Could you do a test? Those sorts of prompts help students to jumpstart their thinking and access the question and get into it without taking over all of the thinking. So let's compare these two. Draw a table and put the time in the first column versus, do you think we could use a table and see what's changing? Those two things, one makes the decision for them, tells them what to do. All they're doing now is just following. The other one puts them in the driver's seat. How do I organize it? Do I want to do that? Where will I put the time? How will I see what's changing? This type of support can reduce the size of the decision, but leave the decision to them. I would say the biggest trap, though, is not one complete question. It's a sequence of 10 or so of them. I know I've been guilty of this, giving them small, little incremental prompts that basically do all the thinking for them. Why don't we start with a table? What about this? What's next? Are you sure? And step by step, I'm doing the thinking, not the student. At the end of the problem, the student has no better understanding of how to address the issue than they did at the beginning. All they've learned is that they wait me out and I'm going to give it to them. So we need to use fewer prompts with more choice. Instead of leading through each step, we might say, what do you think your next move will be? And then wait. That's the hardest part as a teacher. Wait. The student doesn't need to solve the entire problem. They just need to make a decision. If we use fewer questions, we leave more room for thinking. So my challenge for you is choose one prompt, one question that you use often, and change it to a notice, justify, decision-making prompt. Instead of what operation do you use, it might be what relationship do you see? Or instead of what do you do next, ask what will your next move be? Don't try to replace every prompt that you use often all at once. It's just too much. Start with the one that you use the most frequently. In our Think Studio membership, we talk a lot with teachers about that because we focus on one tiny shift that makes a huge impact in the classroom. And our questioning, our prompting is an important piece of that. In my previous video about the difference between a student that's thinking versus waiting, I described different scenarios and how to tell if the student needs a prompt at all. Click the video on the screen and you'll learn how to tell.